Roles. We will argue and insist that we are always one and the same person. However, this is of course not quite true, as we project and are perceived quite differently, not only at different times and places, but also by different people. The daughter is not the same as the mother or colleague and friend whom we all know as Mary. Then the person seen today is not the same observed yesterday. The person we appear as to individuals is not the same that appears when working in a group. When alone we are yet again someone else. Each of us has a definite repertoire of roles that they play out in ordinary life. We have a role for every type of circumstance in which we find ourselves daily, but put us into even slightly different circumstances and we are unable to find a suitable role, then for a short period of time, we become ourselves. The study of roles represents a necessary part of self-knowledge, as each person's repertoire is limited, though some more so than others of course. If a person says I and Eric, then they will not see the whole of themselves, because Eric is also not simply one person. One has at least 5 or 6 of them, 1 or 2 for their family, 1 or 2 at the office, 1 for their subordinates and another for their superiors, 1 for friends in a restaurant and perhaps one who is interested in exalted ideas and enjoys intellectual conversations with a priest. At different times a person is fully identified with one or the other of them and unable to separate themselves from it. To see the roles, to know one's repertoire, particularly to know and to understand its limitations, is to know a great deal. However, the point is that outside of their repertoire, a person feels very uncomfortable, and should something push them out of their rut, even if only temporarily, then they try their hardest to return to any one of their usual roles. As soon as someone falls back into their rut, then everything once again goes smoothly and that feeling of awkwardness and tension disappears. This is how it is in life, but in the work, in order to observe oneself one must become reconciled to this awkwardness and tension, to the feeling of discomfort and helplessness. Only by experiencing discomfort can a person really observe themselves, and it is clear why this is so. When a person is not playing any of their usual roles, when they cannot find a suitable role from their repertoire, then they feel that they are undressed. They are cold, ashamed and want to run away from everybody. This is also why we often dream we are naked in public. However, the question then arises, what do we really want? A quiet life, or to work upon ourselves? If we want a quiet life, then we must first of all never move outside of our repertoire, as in these usual roles we feel comfortable and at peace. If we however want to work on ourselves, then we must first destroy our peace, as to have them both together is not possible. A person must therefore make a choice. When choosing, however, the result is very often deceit, which is to say one tries to deceive themselves. In words, we choose work, but in reality we do not want to lose our peace. The result is that we sit between 2 stools, which is the most uncomfortable position of all. We do no work at all, and get no comfort whatsoever. It is very difficult for one to decide to cast everything to the wind and begin real work. Why then is this so difficult? Principally because our life is too easy, and even if we consider it bad, we are already accustomed to it, and it's better for it to be bad yet known, because we all defend our narrative. Then along comes something new and unknown, we do not even know for certain whether any result will be achieved through it or not. There are no tangible guarantees offered. Besides, the most difficult thing here is that it is necessary to obey someone unconditionally, to submit to someone else's will. If a person could invent difficulties and sacrifices for themselves, then they can sometimes go very far. However, the point is that this is not possible, and it is necessary instead to obey another, or to follow the general direction of work, the control of which can only belong to one person. Such submission to the will of another is the most difficult thing there can be for someone that thinks they are capable of deciding anything, or of doing anything. Naturally, once we get rid of these fantasies and sees what ye really are, then the difficulty disappears. This, however, can only take place in the course of work. But to begin work, and in particular to continue with work, is very difficult, and it is difficult because life runs far too smoothly. Work in a group is assigned according to type, a person's chief feature or their chief fault, that is something that will give them the opportunity to struggle more intensively with this chief fault. We as a rule know nothing within ourselves, because if we did, then we would not have that chief feature. People see this feature in us, however we do not realize how they see or perceive us. If we were able to do this, then we would understand how others see us, and find a way to struggle with or destroy it, that is to destroy its involuntary manifestation. If we could do this, then we could produce on people not the impression that we do now, but any impression that we wanted to. Those around us see our chief feature, however hidden it may be. Of course they cannot always define it, but their definitions are often good and very clear. Take nicknames for example. Nicknames can sometimes define chief feature very well, as they condense key elements down into one single word. There cannot be proper outward considering while a person is seated in their chief feature. For instance, someone who is never at home or cannot stand their own company, cannot suddenly find the ability to consider anything or anybody else. Which illustrates the difference between inner and outward considering. Another individual's chief feature could be that they do not exist at all. We cannot see them, which does not mean, however, that they are always like that. But when they are behaving according to type, as manifested through their chief feature, then they do not exist at all. Aside from these individual tasks, there are general tasks that are given to the group as a whole, in which case the entire group is responsible for its execution or failure. In certain cases, the group can be responsible for individual tasks too. First, though, let's examine general tasking. For example, an understanding of the system and its principal methods should by now be fairly clear, and it should be possible to pass these ideas on to others. In the beginning, it was inadvisable to talk about the ideas of the system outside of groups. There is a definite rule that no one except those specifically instructed to do so should talk to others, either about the work of groups, the talks, or the ideas expressed. It was explained why this was necessary, as it would be difficult to give a correct picture, a correct impression, and instead of giving others the possibility of coming to the ideas and approaching the system, they could be repelled forever, maybe even deprived of the possibility of approaching later on. The situation at this level is, however, different, and enough has now been said. Therefore, if sufficient effort has been made to understand what has been covered, then it should now be possible to pass something on to others. This is how the ideas of the work and the possibility of working as a group can develop, with new people being introduced to the system. Everyone must realize that this is an individual task, though, and not expect others to do it for them. The proper performance of the task will show first of all that something has been assimilated, and the ideas understood correctly. Then secondly, that the members are able to appraise people, to understand who it is worth talking to and who it is not. The majority cannot take in any of these ideas, and it is absolutely useless to talk to them. Many find the idea of esotericism interesting, yet unconvincing. Others feel it is simply New Age and therefore suspicious, hence are not prepared to sacrifice their belief in our evolution from apes. Some remain disturbed by the lack of ideas relating to the love of mankind, and regard the principle of man the machine as degrading. There is no idea of the miraculous and no idealism. There are, however, those that seem able to take in these ideas and with whom it is worth talking. Though if one were to put everything together that people are able to say about the system, then you would probably not believe in it yourself. The fourth way has an inbuilt property, where even slight contact with it calls forth either the best, or the very worst in people. You may know someone all your life, and think they are not a bad person, but they are even rather intelligent. But try talking to them about these ideas, and you will find they are an utter fool. Another person, on the other hand, may appear to have nothing in them, yet speak of these ideas, and you will find that they think, and think very seriously. How can we recognize people that are able to approach the work? To do this, it is necessary to a certain extent, to be. However, before speaking of this, we must establish what kind of people come to the work, and what kind are unable to do so. A person should have some preparation, and must carry with them certain luggage. They should know what it is possible to know through ordinary channels about the ideas of esotericism, about hidden knowledge, about the possibilities of the inner evolution of man, and so on. These ideas must not appear as something entirely new, otherwise it is difficult to speak to them. It is useful if they also have some scientific or philosophical preparation. If a person has a good knowledge of religion, then this can also be useful. However, if they are tied to their religious forms but have no understanding of their essence, then they will find this very difficult. In general, though, if someone knows little, has read but little, and has thought little, then it is difficult to talk to them. If they have good essence, then another way is open to them, without any talks at all. However, in this case they have to be obedient and surrender their will. They also have to approach the system in some way or other. It can be said, therefore, that there is one general rule for everybody. In order to approach the system seriously, people must be disappointed first of all in themselves, in their powers, and secondly in all the old ways. One cannot feel what is most valuable in the system unless they are disappointed in what they have been doing. If they are a scientist, then they should be disappointed in their science. If they are religious, they should be disappointed in their religion. If they are a politician, they should be disappointed in politics. If they are a philosopher, then they should be disappointed in philosophy. If they are a theosophist, then they should be disappointed in theosophy. If they are an occultist, they should be disappointed in occultism. It is necessary, however, to understand what is meant by this. It has been said that a religious person must be disappointed in religion, which does not mean that they should lose their faith. On the contrary, it means being disappointed in the teaching and methods only, realizing that the religious teaching that they know is not enough for them and can lead them nowhere. All religious teaching, except of course for the completely degenerated religions of primitives, and the invented religions of sects or cults, consist of two parts, the visible and the hidden. To be disappointed in religion means being disappointed in the subjective or visible, and to feel the necessity for finding the hidden, objective and unknown part of that religion. To be disappointed in science does not mean losing interest in knowledge. It means being convinced that the usual scientific method applied is quite useless, and leads to the construction of absurd and ever-expanding hypotheses, the formulation of aging truths, becoming convinced of this and then beginning to search for something else. To be disappointed in philosophy means being convinced that ordinary philosophy is merely, as is stated in the Russian proverb, pouring from one empty vessel into another. People rarely even know what philosophy means, although true philosophy can and should exist. To be disappointed in occultism does not mean losing faith in the miraculous, it is merely being convinced that ordinary, accessible and even advertised occultism, under whatever name it might pass, is simply charlatanism, merchandising and self-deception. Although somewhere, something does indeed exist, everything that we know or are able to learn in the ordinary way is not what we need. No matter what we used to do before, no matter what used to interest us, if a person has arrived at this state of disappointment in ways that are possible and accessible, then it is worth talking to them about the system of the fourth way. Only then may they decide to approach the work. If they however continue to think that they are able to find anything upon their former way, or have not as yet tried all the ways, perhaps even think that they can by themselves find anything or do anything, then it means that they are not yet ready. This does not mean of course that they have to throw up everything that they knew before, this is entirely unnecessary. On the contrary, it is often better if they continue to do what they used to do. They must realize however that it is only a profession, a habit, or financial means to an end from which they meet their physical needs. In this case, it is another matter because they will then be able not to identify. There is one thing however that is incompatible with this work, and that is professional occultism, or in other words, professional charlatanism. All the spiritualists, healers, clairvoyants, palm readers, tarot, fortune tellers or anyone even closely connected with them are not any good to us. We need to remember this and take care not to tell them much because everything they learn can be used for their own gain, which is mostly to exploit gullible people financially. There are other categories of course that are no good, however we shall speak of them later, and in the meantime note one thing only. One must be sufficiently disappointed in ordinary ways, and must at the same time think or be able to accept the idea that there may be something, somewhere. If you should speak to such a person, they might discern the truth in what you say, no matter how clumsily you speak. However, if you should speak to a person who is convinced about something else, then everything that you say will sound absurd to them and they will not listen to you seriously. It is therefore frustrating to waste time and energy on them. This system is for those who have already sought and have burned themselves. Those who have not sought and who are not seeking have no need of it. Those that have not as yet burned themselves in their quest for higher knowledge, have no need of it either. People have asked if this system acknowledges the existence of the ether, or how it looks upon evolution. Why does it promote the progression of the human spirit? Should people not organize their lives on the basis of social or universal justice, freedom and fair play, the common good or material comfort and mutual convenience? All or any questions are fine, as long as they originate from something sincere. The question of ether or social progress, the common good and universal justice could be asked simply in order to say something, or repeat what someone else has said, what has been written in a book or scripted in a movie and is therefore only static and white noise. On the other hand, the question may be asked out of some genuine interest, regarding something that has burned deeply within the soul for many years. If it is an aching question, then it is possible to answer and to bring them to the system through any question whatsoever. However, it is necessary for the question to be an aching one, and not just some repeated slogan or doctrine. In attempts to share these ideas with friends, most will find them boring and appear indifferent to any enthusiasm you may desire to project. Closer acquaintances may even observe that you have begun to change for the worse. You appear to them less interesting than you have previously been, becoming colorless, as though fading and even losing your former spontaneity, your former responsiveness to everything, and are accused instead of evolving into a machine. Ceasing to think originally, ceasing to feel and simply repeating like a parrot, everything that you have learned from the fourth way system. The worst is yet to come as time passes, because it means that you have stopped lying. At any rate, that you no longer lie so well, that is that you can no longer lie in so interesting a manner as you have previously done. He is an interesting and entertaining individual, who lies well. We should already be ashamed of lying, and able to acknowledge to ourselves that sometimes there is something we do not know or understand, so no longer feel the impulse to talk as if we know something about everything. It means of course that we have become less interesting, less original, and less, shall we say, responsive. However, it ought to be possible to see what sort of people your friends really are. For their part, they probably feel sorry for you, and in their own way they are of course right, as you have already begun to die. It is a long way yet to a complete death, but still a certain amount of silliness is being removed and you can no longer deceive yourselves as sincerely as you did before. You have now had a small taste of the truth. It may seem that you now understand and know absolutely nothing. Whereas formerly you felt, at least with some certainty, that there were some things that you understood. Now, however, nothing seems to be clear at all. This means that you have truly begun to understand when you understand nothing, where previously you understood everything, or at any rate you thought you were able to understand everything. Now, when you have begun to really understand, you find that you do not understand anything at all. This comes about because the taste of understanding was previously unknown, and this new taste of understanding seems to be a lack of understanding. The ideas contained in this system can therefore do two things. They can unite people in a common interest, or they can distance people from one another entirely. There is nothing to be found in between. Each of us has probably in their lifetime met people of one and the same type. Such people even look like one another, and their inner reactions to things are exactly the same. What one likes, the other will like. What one does not like, the other will not like. It is important to remember such occasions because through them, it is possible to study the science of types. There is no other method to study this, as everything else is imagination. Within the conditions that you live, you cannot meet with more than 6 or 7 different types, although there are in life a greater number of fundamental types. Humanity is made up of combinations of these fundamental types. Some people claim there are 12 fundamental types, as according to legend, the 12 apostles of Christ represented 12 types. Others say there are more. If it were possible to explain these 12 fundamental types, it would have been explained and documented a very long time ago. The whole point is that types and their differences cannot be defined in ordinary language. The language in which they can be defined is yet unknown, and will not be known by us for a long time. It is exactly the same as with the 48 laws. The question is inevitably asked, whether one might know or be told of the 48 laws, as if this were possible. We have been given everything that it is possible to be given at this level, and with the help of that information we need to find the rest out for ourselves. Consider for example the difference between knowledge and being. There are things for the understanding of which a different being is necessary. If there are no more than 7 types around us, then why then can we not know them, and when meeting them be able to recognize and distinguish them? We must begin this study of types with ourselves, and with the observations of self that have been previously discussed. Otherwise it would be knowledge that we would be unable to make use of. Some think that we can see types, but what we see is not types at all. In order to be able to see types, one must first of all know one's own type, and be able to depart from it. In order to be able to know one's own type, one must make a really good study of one's own life, one's whole life from the very beginning. In order to know how and why things have happened as they did, which is the basis of karma yoga.